Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hello and welcome to the Dork Forest. This is Jackie Kashian. You know the websites, JackieKashian.com, DorkForest.com. AllThingsComedy.com is the new podcast umbrella, and they have a million other comedy podcasts. If you are looking for more podcasts in your life, that's a good place to start. There is, on JackieKashian.com, an Amazon banner, so when you order from Amazon, and we all do, go to JackieKashian.com, click on that banner, and then do your regular ordering, and I get a tiny kickback. Life is good. So if that's one way that you can donate and support the show. Another way is to buy merch at JackieKashian.com, where I have t-shirts, CDs, and hoodies. I have some hoodies in stock. And then the donation button is there if you want to just donate directly. I'd love everyone to give me $100 a year. And if you don't have $100, well, give me what you can. Or just talk about and buy some merch. Do whatever you want. Anyway, the credits, of course, Mike Rickberg, Sarah Cohen just sang that song you heard. Mike composed and wrote that song, and he's going to sing Mexican Hat Dance again at the end. Vilmos will fix the website, and Patrick Brady is going to fix this audio. Thanks a lot for listening, folks. Let's get right into it. Hey, and welcome to the Dork Forest. How the heck are you? Sitting in my living room, the guy that is the controller of my pull list, Carr D'Angelo. Is that correct? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's a correct pronunciation.
Excellent. Earth2Comics.com here in Sherman Oaks, and then one up in Northridge, which I've never been to. So people are like, you don't talk about DC Comics enough. You are a more Marvel person. And I said to you, well, you probably know about DC Comics.
Oh, absolutely. I was a DC kid growing up. I mean, that's why the store's called Earth 2, because that's the whole.
That's what you said. You said, Jackie, the show's called Earth 2. And I said, is that a DC thing? And you're like, I'll come over. It'll be fine. So, welcome to the house. If you're allergic to nuts, these cashews have nuts in them.
Okay.
And, so.
I'm not allergic.
God love you.
What's next to the nuts? That's chocolate.
This actually has nuts in it too. I'm out of dark chocolate. So these are, dark chocolate, peanut butter cups.
We're just going to talk about chocolate.
We could talk about chocolate for a while. And then I have a couple of, Dove, peppermint barks. They have dark promises in them. So, yeah. Okay, so I just did an episode with Lee Bennett, Andy's best friend, about DC a little bit. And so what that did was I created a list of questions that we did not address that you might be able to address.
Where are the questions from? Are these from listeners or just questions that you had? And
I
you didn't
had
get to ask
afterwards,
Lee?
and then in the editing, I was like, wait, what? How come I didn't follow up on that?
Oh, wow.
And Lee also, he has the whole thing about Earth 2 is is Earth 2 the golden age?
Yes, it is.
Seem...
That's why I wore my, I know we weren't on camera, but I wore my Golden Age Flash t-shirt today in celebration of Earth 2.
That is a golden age because he's wearing sort of a World War I helmet.
Yes, that's the idea. Yeah, and it's also the Mercury type of, remember like FTD florists used to have Mercury, and it also is like the Mercury kind of thing, but it has a, I think some of the writers like James Robinson, maybe, or Jeff Johns, one of them kind of retrofitted it to be like a World War II or World War I helmet, because that kind of made more sense.
Jeff Johns of the guy who's writing it now, or the guy
Jeff has done Justice Society. James Robinson's writing a series called Earth 2 now.
Okay.
And Jeff's spent a lot of time at DC writing Justice Society comics.
Yeah.
Which are sort of affiliate, even though this is where it gets confusing. Even though they were Earth 1 Justice Society comics, there's always that Earth 2 kind of connotation and World War II connection, certainly.
Because there's the Justice League, the Justice Society, and the League of
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
The League. What is the third one? Well, there's like the Crime Syndicate, which is like on Earth 3. If you want to get advanced, but maybe we should stick to
the evil twins.
Right, exactly. You got Ultraman instead of Superman.
Oh,
but. Yeah, well, that was one of the things that always initially got me most excited about DC was that whole Earth 1, Earth 2 concept, although they eventually kind of put it aside. But when I was a kid, the first comics I picked up were, like Batman and Superman.
Sure.
But then, like, the first comic book, and I love The Flash, I think, because the first comic book I picked up, that was a hero that I had not seen on TV. Because you had the Batman TV show and Superman, the 50s show was always in reruns. And The Flash was the first comic I picked up where it's like, who is this guy?
Right.
And that started, and that led to like Justice League. And then the first issue of Justice League I picked up made my mind explode because it was the second part You know, and DC rarely did like multi-parts. Marvel was known for the multi-part epics.
Okay.
DC rarely did, you know, was...
Wait, you mean so like one comic book was one story?
Usually. Sometimes 2 or 3 stories. I mean, usually
Oh, wow.
DC had, you know, like a lot of 8-pagers.
Okay.
But even on their main books, you know, Flash would have like a 16-page story and a Green Lantern backup or something.
Okay.
And Justice League was usually just one issue. You know, over in Avengers, they were doing things like the Kree Skrull War, which went on for like 2 years or something.
And what year is that?
Oh, we're talking early 70s.
Early 70s,
yeah.
okay.
So I think, I did a list recently for myself, which was kind of fun, of looking at the first issues that I bought of certain books.
Yeah.
And I could sort of see the evolution, how, you know, over the course, it was 1972, 1973 for me. I was, you know, about 10 or so.
Okay.
And it was, you know, going from 10 to 12 and really starting to, you know,
To collect?
to go
Okay.
from like sort of like, you know, potchkeying or whatever, where, oh, I'll pick up this issue. Oh, that's a funny cover.
Yeah.
And then really by 1975, I was just buying everything. And,
All right.
but it started with about 2 years of just DC before I got into Marvel. And the first Justice League book I bought was Justice League 108, which was part 2 of a Justice League Justice Society crossover, which had the Earth 1 heroes and the Earth 2 heroes. But then for good measure,
Yeah.
they threw in a new group of heroes from an Earth called Earth X. And Earth X was actually the Earth where the Nazis won World War II.
Oh my God.
So you're getting thrown into this story with all these different characters running around and not
Right.
a lot of explanation for whatever reason. It really was like, you know, you got to pick it up as you went along.
Right, just keep reading.
Yeah. And Superman in that story, it was the Golden Age Superman, and he had the graying temples.
Okay.
You know, like Doctor Strange or Reed
Yeah.
Richards has. And he had gray hair, and it was never explained. Like, I'm reading Superman and Superman comics.
Right.
But the way DC was at the time too, DC would do weird things in different books. There was a book called World's Finest where Superman and Batman had sons. And the editors used to say,
Oh.
hey, so what? Maybe you don't see the sons in other books, but that doesn't mean they don't have sons. You know,
Okay.
it's not an imaginary story. It's not a what if. It's
Okay.
they really have sons. So then when I go to Justice League and he's got gray hair, I'm figuring, okay, anything can happen. You know? And it wasn't probably a year later when I realized, oh, that was the Earth 2 Superman. Because that was what they kind of adopted, the idea that the Superman from the 30s,
Yep.
who is now 40 years older, would have a little bit of
The aging
gray.
process
Yeah,
would have happened.
exactly, to indicate that. But yeah, it was just that thing of being thrown into so many different costumes and, you know, so many different heroes. That was sort of the fun
mind
of it.
blower that it can be anything.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the coolest things about comic books in general, that I've said this before, is that they can be about anything. And they can, because there's continuity things that happen that people
Right.
really get all torn up about.
Right.
Going to the long boxes and finding it. They're like, well, that wouldn't go with that. And I'm like, it's a comic book. It could be anything, right?
Well, that's how they write themselves into these stories. The first, you know, in terms of like the Silver Age or the modern age of DC, when they came up
Are
with
there just 2 ages? Or are we in a Bronze Age? Is it the Stone Age?
Yeah,
What's
there's
happening?
the Golden Age, Silver Age. I mean, those ages are sometimes talked about in terms of like just the collecting years.
Okay.
So yeah, it goes from Silver, which ends maybe in the early 70s or mid 70s, and then they talk about Bronze, and people try things like Copper and Platinum, and that, you know, I think it went from Bronze and then just to Modern. You know,
Okay,
it's like,
yeah.
and then we're in the Modern Age, and you know, it's Spawn and everything after Spawn. But
Wait, the comic book Spawn is some sort of shark moment?
it is a shark moment. Yeah, I think it is.
I'm sorry to digress, but who the hell is Spawn?
I can't
Is he
really
a
talk
spider?
about Spawn.
You can't talk
Is he? I mean, is he? What?
Yeah, is he Spider? Is he a
Well, no, I think it's like
Spider-Man villain?
Hellspawn. I mean, Spawn comes from. It's one of those, you know, things that I always find kind of interesting because it's like the word spawn doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
But it's like you know, it's calling like it's like
It's birth, right?
It's birth,
It's a birth
exactly.
word, right?
But I think he's called Spawn because he's a hell spawn, which was like a, you know, and
okay.
so I think he made some sort of pact. I'm not a big Spawn reader, so I really don't know. I think
Right,
Al
me
Simmons,
neither.
I think,
Me neither.
is the character's name, but he made some pact with some sort of demon. Or something, and
Yeah.
so he has hell-based
That's going to end
powers.
poorly. It always ends poorly when you make some sort of.
It's never
I don't
a
know.
good thing.
What are you thinking, Guido, in X Factor? And we're back to Marvel. We'll go back to, okay, so in DC. So the Golden Age, Earth 2 is all of those guys.
Is the
Wonder
characters
Woman.
that happened in the 40s, yeah. Because what happened is DC was publishing superheroes in the 40s, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman,
Right.
a version of Green Lantern,
Okay.
not the space guy Green Lantern, but Alan Scott, who wore like a football jersey and riding pants, and really
Nice.
not very color coordinated. He had like purple cape, red shirt, green pants. It was all very, very odd outfit.
Right, that is some found items.
And he was allergic to wood. His weakness was wood.
Really?
Yeah.
Alan Scott?
Yeah.
And what was his superpower? What was his...
Well, he had a Green Lantern. He had a ring that
and
could
a
do
Green
things.
Lantern.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it will-based as well, where he could make stuff happen?
I guess he could make stuff happen. I think normally it seemed more like a green flame or kind of like a force beam. He wasn't like doing like the boxing gloves.
Oh, it was more like a Dragon Ball Z kind of boom kind of thing?
Like a
Okay.
zap, I guess.
Yes, Zort. Okay, so those were the four main?
And Flash.
Oh, right.
Well, pretty much everybody that came around in the 60s, everybody that's in the Justice League kind of has a 40s counterpart. Atom, Hawkman. There was a Sandman, a Golden Age Sandman who had like a gas mask.
Okay.
And then he's in, if you ever read the Neil Gaiman Sandman, they do reference him.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah, he's like and then they brought and then they did a whole series of like Sandman Mystery Theater, but there's pretty much everything that happened later has some kind of antecedent.
So
in the
Atom
40s.
Was the Atom like a nuke?
No, the Atom was just a really tough guy who could, like a boxer. But he was small.
ATOM or AT?
ATOM.
Oh, he was kind of like Napoleon.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a Napoleon kind of character.
Yeah,
where
he was
super tough.
Yeah, he was just really, but he was short.
Right.
He was like the mighty Atom, but he just had no magical or scientific powers, no
Fair
atomic
enough.
powers.
No atomic powers. Got it.
Because even when they first created him in 1939, I mean, they really weren't thinking about atomic
Oh, right.
powers.
We're
quite yet.
pre-atomic. That's great.
Pre-Manhattan Project.
Right, pre-Manhattan Project, or possibly not, but wasn't being talked about.
Exactly.
Wasn't being brooded about.
It wasn't being talked about in the offices of DC Comics. Hey, what about that atom bomb? Oh, that sounds good.
Oh, that seems like a good idea.
But but those characters all kind of died out, or with all the
like post-World War II?
Post-World War II and the whole thing with, Wortham and all those, the superhero comics kind of, just faded away. And then when they brought back The Flash,
Right.
that was when a bunch of editors at DC were sitting around, like Julius Schwartz and his writers, and they were like, well, why don't we try superheroes again?
Okay.
They had a book called Showcase.
Yeah.
DC had a book called Showcase, which literally was like pilot season. It was a different series every issue. So they could try something out on the newsstand. Because at that time, the newsstand didn't like number one issues.
Oh. Wait, what year is this?
Oh, late 50s.
Late 50s.
Yeah.
So 1958. They don't
Yeah.
like number one issues. What does that mean?
Because the newsstand is trying to order. They like seeing, well, we sold this many of issue 50, and then this many of issue 51, so we know how many to get of issue 52.
Okay.
Every time there's a number one, they're like, what the hell is this?
Right, how do we order?
Exactly.
Okay.
It wasn't like now where, my God, I mean, if Marvel or DC could issue number one issues every week, that's all they would do.
Because the implication is new people are they're like, oh, I can get in on number one.
Yeah.
Is that the theory?
Yeah, and collectors, always will pick up, oh, well, I have to get one to read and one to, put away.
Oh, right.
And, so
Right.
number ones always are going to do better at the perceived, potential value.
So Earth 2, when did they go to Earth 2? Was it the Flash on some sort of treadmill? Is that something?
I love the cosmic treadmill. But yeah, because the first Flash story, and this is where they got themselves into trouble, that basically set the stage for the entire, basically history of DC Comics, is in the issue where they introduced the new Flash, it's got the hood and the wings on him, Barry Allen is seen reading a comic book. Because they needed to explain, why does he call himself the Flash when there used to be a superhero called the Flash?
Okay.
So they explained that he actually was a fan of comic books and used to read the old Flash comics.
Okay.
Well, this puts them in a corner now where how do they have the new Flash meet the old Flash? Because it's been established. You were talking about fans who go to the continuity.
Yeah.
It's been firmly established in DC continuity that Barry Allen only knows the Flash as a comic book character.
Right.
So Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash, can't just show up.
Yeah, how does he show up?
How does
He's
he show
not real.
up? That's why we have to create Earth 2.
Okay, so it's parallel Earth that he ends up going to by breaking some sort of sound barrier or something.
Right. About 2 years, I guess, probably a year and a half, 2 years into the new Flash run, it was so popular and they were getting letters going, well, where's the old Flash and why can't they meet? So they created a story called Flash of Two Worlds.
Okay.
And they didn't have the cosmic treadmill yet. In that story, Barry Allen Flash he's in some theater and he does some serious spinning. And just like tracks a new vibrational frequency or something, and it brings him into a whole new world.
Okay.
And he picks up the newspaper and sees he's from Central City, but he sees this newspaper says he's in Keystone City.
Okay.
And then he realizes, wait a second, Keystone City, that's the comic book city. The comic book city. That's where the Flash is. So he goes to, he just literally shows up, in the same way, if you wound up in Gotham City, you would I would go
look for Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, you'd go to Wayne Manor and go, hi, you're Batman.
You know what? I so want to do that. Why can't we do that? That'd be, his mind would be blown.
So, yeah, and that's when they created.
How do you think Batman would respond to that?
I think he'd kill you.
That's my problem with Batman. He might actually snap and go, you can't know. You can't know. And I'm like, turn me into a Robin. Just now you have to train me. Yeah. And I'm La Femme Nikita and let's fucking do this.
Maybe that's what he does. Maybe when someone finds out his identity, he lets them be Robin and then lets the Joker kill them. And then
that's it. There's a definite pattern involved.
There's a lot of Robins who just don't make it, and maybe that's why. Oh yeah, learn all the secrets. Come on in. I'll tell you everything.
This is and here's my ATM number. Here you go. Live it up.
Have you met this guy with the green hair over here?
And allow me to introduce you to this madman. Yeah, that is okay. So he vibrates. He shows up at Keystone City, and then he just shows up, and they become friends.
And then.
And that was called A Flash of Two Worlds?
Flash of Two Worlds. Flash 123.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And how many, was it a one-off? Was it just one whole?
Well, that was, one story, one issue. But then they started making it a yearly thing, and then they started extending, and then they brought back the Justice Society, and then they started doing it regularly in Justice League.
Oh, where they would constantly go check in with Earth 2 and go, what should I do? When do you think mortgage rates are going to drop? Or whatever, right?
Yeah, because maybe they have a little, well, they were in the same, it's just that, what was the theory? The theory was that some things happened on Earth 2 20 years before. So where, superheroes started as a phenomenon in the 40s on Earth 2, but didn't really happen until the 60s on Earth 1.
Okay.
That was sort of the, and that's when they started the stories that always had the word crisis in them. Crisis on Earth 1, Crisis on Earth 2 was the first meeting of the two groups.
And here's what I forgot to ask Lee, was something about Infinite Crisis. Is that on Infinite Earths?
Well, there was, that's when they collided everything in the 80s.
In the 80s, they tried to join
They destroyed all the worlds.
Okay.
And Marv Wolfman and George Perez, who were the biggest people at DC at the time because of Teen Titans was like the big hit series.
Wait, who's Superboy?
Well, no, this Teen Titans, that was like, Robin, and that was like the old school Teen Titans that were all sidekicks. They were just, so it was Wonder Girl and Robin, Dick Grayson Robin, Speedy.
Because in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of teen sidekicks, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had a sidekick.
Yeah.
And then the Teen Titans, they all just gathered together like on...
And Marvel, and the biggest book at Marvel was X-Men, so DC wanted to do something
for the Ute?
like X-Men.
Okay.
Because X-Men had the Ute following.
Yes.
And DC, all the characters, they always seemed older,
Yeah.
Superman and Green Lantern, they always have this they all feel like your dad.
They always seemed like dads. Yeah, they were told. Yeah. It was like, these guys know how to, they could fix the lawnmower.
But Peter Parker and guys like that are always, everything's going wrong for them. Right. But even Clark,
don't even get me started on I don't understand. If you were a scientific genius, why are you delivering pizzas and taking photographs of yourself?
Right.
Those are not jobs.
So was Peter Parker the first person to take selfies?
Yes. Holy smokes. Yes, he was. He invented the selfie.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
And they were all out of focus. That was always a problem. He'd put up that little camera. It would have web fluid all over it.
How did he afford, whatever. Anyway.
Well, they've kind of dealt with that because now he's part of like that big think tank, so he can kind of get some.
Oh,
so
now he has an income. Do you know why? Because Doc Ock has fixed his life.
Well, yes, Doc Ock's done a very good job with Peter Parker's
He's
life.
raising Peter Parker to his potential.
Yes.
So when he finally gets his body back, which I hope happens, because I'm not saying that I don't enjoy the crossover. Anyway, I've drifted again to.
Well,
so Infinite Earths.
Oh, well, Crisis on Infinite Earths was. Well, when you go back in time, you know, and I was sort of doing fanzines around this time too, with you always had the Marvel versus DC debate, and one of the biggest criticisms against DC that they began to feel was a hindrance to getting new readers or being considered hip or cool was the whole two Earths concept.
Right, I'm going to cough over here. But
Okay,
keep talking.
Okay, and that was. People kept saying, or readers would say, oh, it's so confusing and it doesn't matter because they have all these Earths and if they don't want something to happen on one place, and they were also, in addition to the multiple Earths, they were doing, DC was known for the imaginary story, where it's like, what if Superman was Batman's brother? And they would just, they would just do it and then they go, oh, but it was just an imaginary story,
Oh, that is annoying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was always Bobby Ewing in the shower,
Exactly, the JR thing.
Yeah.
You can't do that. That will irritate people when they've invested hours and months into following this thing, and you're like, "Oh, it never happened."
Right.
And you're like, "No, I don't approve of that." So
and that would happen all the time. I mean, especially like in Lois Lane marries Superman. Oh, it was just a dream. So DC had that rap. So they took an idea that they called Crisis on Infinite Earths, and basically the end result. I mean, and that was like a year-long epic story, 12 parts.
Wow.
And it was set out to redefine the DC universe. And it happened right before, like, when John Byrne took over Superman.
Okay.
In the mid-'80s. That was a big thing. Because, again, John Byrne was one of Marvel's biggest talents. He was doing Fantastic Four. He was doing, he'd done Spider-Man. He'd done everything pretty much for Marvel.
Byrne
X-Men.
with an E? Like B-Y-R-N-E?
B-Y-R-N-E, yeah.
Okay.
He was, after he was like the main X-Men artist, and then he took over writing and drawing Fantastic Four, and it's a really great run. And, DC wooed him over and said, we'll let you do anything. You can reinvent Superman.
Wow.
And
okay.
So
mid-'80s he does this.
Yeah, 1985, 86.
Wow.
And they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, which basically wiped out everything you knew about DC from 1938 to 1985.
And Byrne did that.
Well, no, that was Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
Okay.
Who were hot off of their Teen Titans stuff.
Oh, right.
So they were like the biggest talents at DC as well. So that was just a story. They had there's a character that shows up now. I think he's still in like Green Lantern every now and then, the Anti-Monitor. So there's he has it's all antimatter. Matter meets antimatter. Everything gets wiped out. So they reduced it basically to one Earth, which was a combination of. They got to pick and choose.
Okay. So Dream Team.
So Dream Team, exactly.
Okay.
And then they created a continuity where it used to be that, so it made it more of like an epic generation of heroes.
Yeah.
So where you had the world, so Superman wasn't World War II anymore because they didn't want to have two Supermans. They didn't want to have a 40 Superman and a 80 Superman.
Yep.
So basically you had two generations. You had some of those classic World War II type of characters, but then any of the major ones, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they started now for the first time in the 80s.
Okay.
And everything was, and a bit like, to some extent, a little bit like what they did a couple of years ago with the New 52.
Right.
But this was to...
And this was the first big time that they did that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a ground zero, wiping of the decks.
Yeah, and Lee told me that Wonder Woman in the 40s, she was like the secretary?
Yes,
or
for the
was that
Justice Society. Yes.
Was that in the 80s too? Did she get to fight in the 80s?
Oh, she got to fight in the 80s. The 80s actually,
Okay.
she had a really good series.
Pretty
in
good
the
run?
80s. But in the she had adventures in the 40s, but
They were lady adventures.
right. But they were lady adventures. A lot of bondage. There was always a lot of like weird stuff going on. And when they did and when they would have and Justice Society, well, for a while, when they did the Justice Society book in the 40s, it wasn't always a team up.
Okay.
Originally, it was just that's why it was a society, because I was thinking about this. Justice Society, it sounded like, just like a social club, and that's what it was.
Oh, okay. They would meet for ice cream and coffee occasionally.
Basically, it was just a framing device.
Okay.
It was, you'd open, the first page would be them sitting around a table.
Okay.
And they'd go, well, what have you been up to? And then they would just do a Flash story and a Green Lantern story. So it was just an excuse to have an anthology.
Oh, okay. So they were all just flashback stories.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Eventually they became team-up stories.
Right.
But
initially they weren't. They were just all that.
Initially they weren't.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
And then you had the thing of at the table, they'd go, well, Wonder Woman, you're the secretary. Do you have our notes from last time? Yeah.
She was like Robert's Rules. You were supposed to acknowledge me immediately.
Exactly.
And so, God, I don't approve. Anyway, so, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So then, let's talk New 52, because I tried when New 52 started, everyone was like, you gotta read DC. Because what is the complaint against Marvel? What do people usually find irritating? Because with DC, if they were doing that, and it's all a dream.
Right.
Or, because my problem with Marvel has been that all of the bad guys are too scary. All of the bad guys are genuinely madmen.
Right.
And some of the art reflects how creepy that is.
It's a little disturbing. Yeah.
It can genuinely disturb me. So what do people who read mostly DC, what don't they like about Marvel?
Well,
I wonder.
Back then, I think it used to be that it seemed to never end. That stories just didn't really have beginnings, middles, and ends, and it was just kind of an endless
one fight after another.
And there used to be the cliche in the 70s and 80s, certainly, of, whenever the heroes didn't know each other. So whenever they met, they'd always fight,
Oh, weird.
In
Marvel?
Iron Man and Thor. Who are you? I don't know. Who are you? And they'd get into a fight, or, there'd always be like a gimmick for.
How could they not know each other? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and, someone cast a spell, or there's just some misunderstanding, which they kind of use in the Avengers movie. There is that moment, but again, they are sort of all meeting for the first time,
right?
And it makes you get one of those.
Yes, yes, we'll give you one scene with that, and then everybody's got to figure out how to work together.
I think sometimes that one of the biggest complaints I hear about Marvel now. That's funny. It's called Marvel now too, but one of the things is. Now they do so much over.
Oh, the crossover.
So much crossovers and so many books with the same characters that what used to be the strength of Marvel, which was sort of a cleaner continuity.
Yeah.
I think now people go, how is, what you hear a lot is, how is Wolverine in 25 books?
Right.
Every X-Men book has Wolverine in it. Every Avengers book has Wolverine in it. Spider-Man's in every Avengers book. How can these guys?
There's a Workaholics Anonymous that he might want to look into, because that's why I like that Hawkeye title, because it's like when Hawkeye's not being Hawkeye, this is what Hawkeye's doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, your life is a mess.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great book. And it is just sort of taking the character, and it can exist within. It's got its own storytelling world that it takes place in, but you can allow that, yes, and in between issues or in between panels, he's going off with the Avengers and having a thing, but this is what happens when he goes back to his apartment.
When he goes back to his apartment, he's going to lie down, and then he's got a neighbor.
Yeah.
And so, so that's the big, because that is Andy's, actually. That's Andy's problem. He's like, I can't, because he loves the X-Men, but he can't. There's too many books.
Right.
And he can't do them all. So.
Right. And how do you keep track of them? Avengers. Again, I think the Avengers books are really good, but I sometimes just forget which one I'm reading.
Right.
Because they have a similar, a couple of them, Avengers and New Avengers, are both written by Jonathan Hickman. So there's a similar style. And a similar storytelling, and then I'm just like, it happened with Bendis too, but wait, which story am I in?
Right.
And that's why sometimes I'll go back to the collections.
That's how I learned, the names of the writers, is because I was like, oh, that guy Daniel Way writes this one.
Yeah.
So this is the one I'm reading.
Right. That's how you track the book.
That's how I track the book,
yeah.
which has been great because you like to appreciate the people that are actually doing the work.
Sure.
And it hasn't happened yet enough with the artists. And I feel a little bad about that. But, Andy's like, well, you're just 10 years in. You're 10 years in. When you're 30 years in, maybe then you'll figure it out.
Well, it's also because, especially with Marvel, they're doing more rotation of artists too. So because the artists and it seems the biggest problem, and that's also a in terms of consistency, in terms of complaints, sometimes people will say, oh, I'd rather see more of a steady art team or a steady team on a book. But because for whatever reason, the paradigm that exists for comics, which is monthly comics, there aren't a lot of artists who can actually produce
That's a lot of
amount
work,
of
right?
pages a month. It is a lot of work.
Okay.
I mean, I can't draw, so I can only begin to imagine.
Right, me too.
Turning out 20 pages of that every month.
And I suppose maybe it's easier now because it's on the computer, but maybe not. Maybe it's harder.
I think there's things that make for production, I think that make some of the process easier.
Right.
I mean, people can go from, you can see it where someone can go from a lot. I'll put it this way: it shines up some not great work a lot better.
Okay.
Because you can take basically somebody's very rough pencils and then have the computer guy kind of tighten up the lines, and then the colorist can make the sky, go 3 different colors. So, it creates at least a veneer of a certain production value, even if the art isn't fully completed.
Oh, right. If it is an amazing art, it can be cleaned up into something better.
And it looks, and just flipping by, just like, it's like when you're watching a movie or a TV show, you go, well, heck, it's a lousy movie, but it's got great cinematography,
Right. They made that blow up really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Well, the last episode of The Dork Forest was with Greg Franklin, who did, I don't know if you saw that animated, when my album came out, I did an animated track.
Okay.
One of my tracks from the joke, the LA Pet joke.
Okay.
Was he animated it, and he was talking about his first animation gig was where he was working for AOL and he had to do something for Disney, and it was 1989, I think, and he was given hundreds of different poses of Mickey, original drawings of Mickey Mouse, and he had to do something for Disney. And so he realized that if he scanned them and took the heads off of the different ones and then just did cut and paste, he could put it together a lot faster, and the lines were better. So he didn't end up drawing any of that.
Wow.
And his boss was like, well, where's your art? And he goes, oh, it's in my head. It's in my head. And then I put it together on Flash on the computer.
Yeah.
And so he said it ended up looking really good, but it was one of the tricks that he could do with the animation.
Well, yeah. I mean, and for people who, one of the things that's really become a big collector thing now is original art, and there's less and less of it because there aren't the same kind of, if you have,
there are no cells.
There aren't for computer, for animation, there aren't cells for comic books. They don't paste up, the word balloons. If you see the old, comics from the 70s or 80s, the production art literally has, someone's pencils and someone's inks, and then somebody who cut out word balloons and pasted them on the boards.
Wait, is it like a diorama? Like you were given a piece of paper, somebody drew the pencils, and then you handed to another guy?
It was all the work was done on the same board.
Piece of paper, essentially.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense, but that's crazy.
Right, but it doesn't have, and now even when there is a separate penciler and inker, most inkers will make just a high grade copy of the pencil art and then ink over a blue line print. And so the penciler has his pencil art and the inker has theirs. So now when there is even when it's done traditionally, and all the lettering is done on
the computer.
On computer, so there are no it's all overlays or on computer there's no more like again pasted up balloons.
Okay, so that's more and more rare now.
Yeah.
So how are you gonna sell that?
Right.
That's impossible.
Well, you can and some art as you say doesn't exist. It only exists digitally or in the artist's head.
Yeah. So, because when I first started reading comics, some of the DC titles that I would get into were all weird. It was like when you bought the Flash. Right. I was really excited about that Dial H for Hero. 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, H-E, or that guy was a great writer. I forget what was his,
because it wasn't the first, I'm told it wasn't the first time that Dial H for Hero thing came out, but it was like the second or third time.
But it was the first time where it had that really, kind of, urban, deconstructionist feel. All the other ones were it was a 50s concept, and it was very silly in the 50s, and it was Robbie Reed, one of those, alliterative, 60s, 50s names.
Right.
And he would dial it, but then, but HERO, I'm just spelling it out because that's sort of, because there's a new one now called Dial H, but that one was just called Hero, I think. And
it was spelled out, right?
Yeah, Will Pfeffer was the writer, I think. And that was a great series.
In the one 10 years ago?
Yeah.
It was one of the first DC ones I picked. And I think the Secret Six.
Secret Six was also great,
Was also great. But I had a hard time, I tried, when New 52 came out, I was like, well, let's do this, right? I want to read Superboy, and I want to read Teen Titans, and I want to read Batman Incorporated, and I want to read Superman. And I wasn't able to stick with them. The only ones I stuck with Batgirl for a long time, and I'm still doing Batwoman, even though it's creepy. Her sister is creeping me. Why is everyone so clinically insane in
the
DC?
Batman universe? That's sort of, and that's what the sort of tagline on that has been, is how dark and twisted the DC universe is in the New 52.
Yeah, and Lee was talking about how Lex Luthor isn't insane.
Right.
Lex Luthor is just a bad guy. He wants to make money. He's a corporate villain.
Right.
But why is he a villain? He's working within the system.
Right.
And is he even a villain? And
yeah, and I think we're going to see more probably later this year he hasn't, certainly he's someone who doesn't like Superman, but he's not out there yet. They haven't put him back in his purple, power suit, where he tries to fight Superman as much as and that's a cool idea. The idea of the human being who just really resents the presence of this. Why is this alien Metropolis's biggest hero? I'm the one who's done more for, Metropolis.
Right.
I give people jobs. Superman doesn't give anybody jobs.
He's not a job creator. He knocks down a building. That's a job creation, except for he's not paying anybody to put it back up.
Right, exactly.
So he can't do it on his salary. Yeah, so it's there was a okay, and Reyes Paul? No. Who's the bad guy? Allow me to start this question over. Batman has his bad guy. The not RuPaul, not Ron Paul. It's the Asian. He was Liam Neeson.
Raj Al Ghul.
Raj Al Ghul.
Okay. That's like one of those. I have to picture it. RuPaul. Oh, now I see. I can move the letters around in my mind.
It's just a little jumble. Welcome to Boggle. So yeah, but Ghul?
Raj Al Ghul.
Raj Al Ghul, who is an Asian bad guy. Yes. But his dream, because Lee was also saying that he wasn't insane either. He just has an agenda through the ages to burn down cities where it's Sodom and Gomorrah. There's no hope here.
Right.
We just got to start over. So, but he does seem slightly crazy, right? Is he crazy in the new one?
Again, I'm trying to think. Yeah. They're doing a whole villains thing at the end of this year because it's really only been like a year and a half or almost 2 years into. A lot of the classic villains haven't been
even come up yet.
Yeah, because
because
they wanted to, I think, save some of that because I think they've only done one Joker story, and it was a really good Joker story, but there was only one.
Who wrote that?
Scott Snyder.
Oh, okay. Is it SNYDER?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been writing Batman, and Batman's probably, the best book of the New 52, and now he's writing a new Superman book with Jim Lee.
Is it that pretty one? Is it that beautiful Superman Batman title?
Oh, no, Superman Batman that's by Greg Pak, but that is beautiful. Batman Superman this time around. But that's drawn by Jay Lee, and that was really nice art.
Oh, that was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was Pak, P-A-K.
Greg Pak,
yeah.
He wrote World War Hulk.
Okay.
No, not World War. Planet Hulk. He did that whole Planet Hulk epic where Reed Richards and those guys exile Hulk into outer space.
Yeah, they send him into space.
It was hey Bruce, come over here, check out the rocket ship.
Bam.
Yeah.
And then shove him in a box and send him into space with no trajectory, right?
No.
It's very a kind of Star Trek kind of situation.
It totally was exile. It was we don't know what to do with the Hulk. It was a clever idea, and Greg really, that was a great storyline.
You're just gonna make him mad. That's what you're going to do with the Hulk.
Well, when he came back, that's what led to World War Hulk, because then he went after everybody. But he really didn't kill anybody. That was one of those. That was one of those really big build-up events.
Yeah.
Like World War Hulk coming after everybody, and big fight scene.
Fight scene.
And
Always,
but nobody really, not that you want people to die, but it's just sort of,
right.
You build something up, you have to have some sort of, consequence.
Yeah, the stakes have to be actually real.
Yeah.
Like that weird one-off, the Irredeemable.
Right.
Who did that? Is that IDW?
Boom.
Boom. Okay. Because that was that was the theory on that was that Superman
goes bad.
Snaps. And it's like the last straw, because you never think about how Superman can hear everything.
Right. He knows
Yeah, so there is some tool bag just sitting around going, Superman doesn't saw all that. What's with him in his underwear outside of his jeans? And what's he like? Yeah. And so he snaps.
Yeah.
And then it's genocide.
Yeah.
And
and how do you stop it, man? What do you do when that happens?
Yeah, that was a great book.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time sometimes when they get super dark.
Yeah.
But was Hard Time the guy who wrote the Duck?
Steve Gerber, yeah.
Yeah.
Hard Time was a good series.
That was one of the first ones I picked.
Yeah, that was again that was all about 10 years ago, and DC was doing some interesting stuff like outside their normal.
Because that was
universe.
DC too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a whole line. There was 3 or 4. They all had they weren't quite black and white, but they were almost black and white.
Oh right, they weren't primary colors.
Yeah,
it was muted.
Right, it was all very muted.
Yeah.
Everything was like greens and it was like olive drab.
Yeah. Who are your favorite DC heroes?
The Flash. I mean, like I say, partially just because, like I say, it was
from childhood.
From childhood, and in terms of powers that you wish you had. I mean, right? There's not enough time in the day. Don't you wish it could be super fast? I mean, that's.
Right.
That's my thing. If I could, my wife asked me to, clean up. If cleaning up took me a second and I could still watch, Mad Men over and over and over, for hours after that, why not,
Right.
But that was the thing. I mean, everything in the comics. I mean, what Flash could do in the blink of an eye, was always, that's how he'd get one over on the bad guys. Well, while you were looking that way, I ran to the bank and then ran around the world 5 times and then, made ice cream and came back and, and put you in jail.
Right.
And it was like, but it happened in one panel.
Right.
If you can be that fast, you can just do.
Well, that's so amazing though, because that's what I've always wondered about the Flash is that why, so if he's doing, I mean, what would life be like for the Flash?
Right.
Where you're just like, everyone's so slow.
Right.
Everyone around him. Now, is the Flash married? What's the Flash's? Does he have sons?
Well, New 52, again, they've kind of rewound. I mean, again, that was in the, the original, DC, the Flash was like a big tragedy in the pre-crisis, universe.
In the 80s universe?
Yeah, because his wife, he did get married and then his wife died and she was murdered, but he was framed for the murder. So there was like one of the longest and unfortunately not best storylines ever is
but you stuck it out?
I did stick it out. It was called The Trial of the Flash. And they basically dragged this out until they then killed the Flash in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Okay.
Flash was like the patron saint of Crisis. No, Barry Allen.
That was Barry Allen. Okay.
Yeah. And he was like the patron saint of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Oh, okay.
He gave up his life so that, one world might live.
Oh, there we go.
And like I say, his story was a little bit, he's one of those characters, as much as I love, Barry Allen was always kind of boring, and he was one of those characters that was always more interesting in death, and
Right.
when other writers would write about him after that, he was always much more interesting, so that was one of the
What
fun
did they
things.
write about him after that? Like flashbacky kind of stuff?
Yeah, and how,
People didn't know this. He used to read to children.
Well, it was more about how other characters reacted to him. I mean, they did do some flashback things like about let's look back at the friendship between Flash and Green Lantern.
Okay.
But also because when they relaunched the Flash after Crisis, it was Wally West who was Kid Flash.
Okay.
So it was really one of the first times in a long-term kind of way. I mean, they've done it a couple times with Dick Grayson becoming Batman.
Right.
But at that time, it was the real first time a sidekick became
the
hero and really stuck with it. And I mean, and for 15 or 20 more years, Wally West was the Flash. So part of that character though was was in some way had to refer back to,
because he knew the original Flash.
He knew right, exactly. He knew where he came from, and he knew what his influence was, and he was in the and he was taking up the mantle of somebody else's. He wasn't calling himself Velocity or something.
Right.
Something.
And was it great? Was the Wally ones?
Wally West Flash had a great run. I mean, he's one of apparently at conventions and stuff, and now he's like not in the New 52.
He is not.
He's kind of disappeared, and that's one of the biggest questions that keeps coming up at conventions. When they ask DC, where's Wally West?
What's he doing?
Yeah.
And so, is there a Flash? But there's a Flash now.
It's Barry Allen, but it's again dialed back where he's still single. He's not married. Again, I think they're
they rebooted it. And just
because
brought
it's
him,
been rebooted by the New 52. It's Barry Allen. It's
Barry
sort of a
Allen
new
was
young
essentially
Barry Allen.
just young Barry Allen. It's 2012.
Yeah.
It's Barry Allen, and that's all. And now we're just beginning again.
Yeah, and he's and he's a police scientist, which was always one of the interesting things. And,
that is interesting.
And it was interesting in the 50s and 60s, and now with CSI and all that kind of stuff, it seems like that's what we meant to do all along.
Right. Right. You would think is the Flash, because I've never read any Flash. So if I were to read some Flash, what Flash? What's a good trade right now?
I think Flash Rebirth is a good trade. That's by that sort of reintroduces the Barry Allen Flash, even though it happened sort of before the New 52. It's still a good kind of primer.
Good. Yeah. That's what I need.
It's written by Jeff Johns, who's always delivers.
Always good.
And then I think would it be the new, and probably the new, and then the New 52, and it's a writer artist team that's kind of cool because they are literally the artists and the writers together, and it's a beautifully designed. I mean, the book is really well designed.
They both write?
Yeah.
Sort of
the
like
inker,
the Luna Brothers, kind of.
In a way, I guess. Yeah.
What's their names?
Brian Bucoletto and Francis Manipool. And Francis is sort of is the main designer, and Brian was his inker.
Okay.
So, and then together they write the
and Francis is a man?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because I like the idea of him being a scientist. I don't want the Flash to be, is he quippy?
Not so much.
Because if he's so quick,
he'd
be quick mentally. I want him to be with the snappy comeback.
I think there's occasionally. I mean, the joke in the old, really old comics was always that he was always late. That was that even though he. Yeah.
That is. I find that you might be able to just use that once, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that with his girlfriend. But part of it was, because he was always off fighting. She thought he was late, but he's really off fighting supervillains. That's why he's late.
I get it.
He's late because he's fast.
Right.
In a weird way.
And did she know that he was the Flash? Or
eventually she did find out. I think she found out before they married, because I think it was a big bone of contention in the 60s that it would be somehow inappropriate for them to marry without her knowing.
I think it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
Did you read, have you seen Love and Capes?
Yeah, that's a fun book. I like that book.
That's a very sweet, fun book about a Superman character who, when they're dating, the first thing he does when it's serious is he tells her that he is Superman.
Yeah.
And he's been on the show, Tom Zoller.
Okay.
And he calls it a sitcom.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a sitcom where he's a superhero, and then his friend is the Batman character.
Right.
But he's a much lighter Batman. And then there's Amazonia, who is the...
I don't think I've seen any issues with her in that.
Amazonia is the Superman character's ex-girlfriend.
Right.
And
sort of like a Wonder Woman
She's
type.
the Wonder Woman, and she ends up dating Batman. Spoiler alert. A comic book there's only about 70 issues. But it's a very sweet, very fun comic. And,
you like the art style.
Yeah, I like, and he writes and does all of it. Mm-hmm. I think he's a one-man band in that situation. So the Flash is one of is currently your favorite, or has always been?
Sort of in terms of personal favorite. I mean, again, you can't talk about DC without talking about Batman.
Right.
I mean, everybody loves Batman, so if you're the guy.
Which Batman title is good right now?
The main Batman title is really good.
And it's just called Batman?
Batman.
Okay.
Just Batman. It's with a J. Just Batman.
Is it?
No.
I want that for some reason.
And Batman and Robin is a good title. Well, now it's not. I don't know. Well, now it's going through a change because Damian Wayne, when they brought in Bruce Wayne's son, who is the grandson of Ra's al Ghul,
Oh, really?
By the way, that's the whole family line is
Batman married Ra's al Ghul's daughter?
well, they didn't marry. She somehow, I mean,
whatever, the baby daddy.
But I think at one point it was suggested there was actual, a conjugal visit, but now I think it's now somehow more, cloning or something. Genetic material, absorbed somehow.
Sure.
And they,
Heaven forbid.
but Damian
Batman,
Wayne
yes.
the young Robin is no longer with us, but during that time, any of the stories with Batman and Damian Peter Tomasi is the writer of Batman and Robin.
Okay.
Previously it had been Grant Morrison, and that's been a really good
The Grant Morrison run of Batman and Robin is great?
Oh, Batman and Robin by Grant Morrison is great. Yeah.
Okay. And because I love almost everything he writes, I can't imagine. And I am reading actually Huntress and Power Girl.
Which under the title, I think, World's Finest, yeah.
Okay. And they're from some parallel universe.
They're from Earth 2.
They're from Earth 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think one of them is Batman's daughter.
Huntress is Batman's daughter in from Earth 2. And that's a 70s idea that they've sort of
And Power
refitted.
Girl is Superman's relation?
Well, she's like Power Girl is like Supergirl. She's Superman's cousin.
Okay, because she's Krypton. She's
Kryptonian as well. Yeah.
Okay, and I like that title actually.
Yeah.
They are very funny, and they are. I'm gonna want some comedy in my in my comic books. I like them to be. They're funny pages.
Right.
And so
do you read Deadpool?
I do read Deadpool.
Deadpool is hilarious.
Brian Posehn is doing the new Deadpool, and I read
Jerry
it
Dugan,
first because it was Brian. Mm-hmm. But previously there were 4 Deadpools that I started reading.
Right. Well, it's always been designed. I mean, in the past years, yes, and Daniel Way was doing it as well too. But it's been that kind of.
His were hilarious. The Daniel Way Deadpools were hilarious because they're super dark but very funny, and he's such a mess. And
well, you know what? When they started doing Superior Spider-Man, one of my biggest concerns, because what I always used to like about Spider-Man, and the first Spider-Man comic I ever read was wasn't a real Spider-Man comic. It was like a Marvel team up.
Yeah, me too.
And it was just like Spider-Man and the Beast chasing a villain across Manhattan.
Right.
And so it was all quips, what you're talking about. And the Beast was also a quippy character.
Okay.
And so it was just quip, 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 and then making fun of the villain all the way through.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And I liked that experience. And that's always been part of Spider-Man, that wit. And I think one of the things I was most concerned about with Superior Spider-Man was that, well, Doc Ock isn't funny.
He isn't.
But Dan Slott has made the book funny by how serious Doc Ock is.
Yes, Dan Slott has really brought it.
Yeah, and it makes me laugh because he just says the most inappropriate thing, or he says something so seriously.
He's so didactic, and he's so preachy, and he's so arrogant.
Yeah.
And everybody, from like the tiniest mugger to the most, to Captain America, just going, "Who are you?"
Right.
And
I look forward to that moment every issue now, where it's like, where is he going to work in when he goes, "I am the superior Spider-Man," because it's always like it gets worked up to,
Right, and him, and the fact that he's getting Peter Parker's doctorate right now, and so he's taking those classes from that guy that he doesn't like, from his own past.
Right.
That it just makes me, because there's always a point in any comic book that we're reading that I have to say to Andy Ashcraft, have you read this?
Yeah.
Because I don't know who these people are.
Right.
And luckily, he's got the long boxes in his brain box.
Right.
And he can go, but sometimes it's just a mysterious stranger.
Right.
Like at the end of it, there'll be someone in a mask and it's this huge reveal at the end of a comic book. And you're like, oh, is that supposed to mean something? And sometimes it does, but many times it's just a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's find out next issue.
Or
even
issue.
I think something and I think the guy that professor that they introduced, I don't think we've never necessarily
ever met him
before. It's just something that, again, it's a Dan Slott invention that there are other professors or scientists that Octavius has met along the way and has contempt for, so we're going to write one of them back in. Not everybody has been in, a previous issue of Spider-Man.
True, and I'm going to suspect Octavius has some contempt.
Oh,
yeah, it's a big brush that he's willing to paint humanity with.
Well, see, I like it because when I was they made Green Goblin the biggest villain in Spider-Man, and they're bringing him back. It looks like, but for me it was Dr. Octopus was virtually, every other issue at the time. I mean, he seemed to be the main villain more than the Green Goblin.
Right. And I liked actually my reintroduction to some of this stuff is all the movies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I've seen in this living room, one of Andy's best friends, he will watch anything. And so we watched both Fantastic Four movies back to back. And that wasn't fun.
Right.
That was a lot of work right there. And the Daredevil movie.
Oh, God.
And, cause Daredevil, I genuinely like Daredevil, but, he's a mess.
Yeah.
And, really? You won't go north of 52nd Street? What if something's happening over on 54th? Really?
Right.
You're not going to help anyone out? Okay. All right. And
this is my turf, Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen. It's been gentrified at this point. Matt Murdock. Yeah. It's there's a Gap and a Starbucks on every other corner.
But yeah, well, I mean, so how did you think of, so were you saying that like the Spider-Man movies, you liked, Dr. Octopus?
Yeah, I liked the Dr. Octopus, and I liked that he was
Alfred
flawed.
Molina,
and yeah. Who was that?
It was Alfred Molina.
It was Alfred Molina, that's right. And he was like, he was approachable, and that's what I like about the new Superior Spider-Man, is because he has this responsibility.
Right.
Because of Peter Parker's memories.
Right. I hear that comes with great power. They're like a matched set.
They might be. Yeah, there seems to be some power and responsibility equality going on. And if only Karl Rove could feel that.
Oh, God.
In other news, so in the new, so Batman's good.
Batman's really good.
There's a Superman that's good, and then of course the beautiful Superman that
the new Batman Superman, yeah.
That seems to be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Did Batman in the new Batman Superman? I've only read one. Mm-hmm. They don't seem to know each other.
Well, that's what they were sort of doing. Again, because the new 52 is using not the established continuity, they can fill in those gaps. So they wanted to, tell a story of the first time they met.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, and trying to figure out like who. Like,
although it immediately took like a time travel twist, and then they also like jumped to the future where their future selves were. So that actually
maybe that's what confused me.
That confused me at the end too, because now you had like two Supermans and two Batmans running around.
Right.
But I like the Superman in the t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, the Superman.
I thought that was a great idea when Grant Morrison was doing that.
It's because that was when it was before he got his costume. Is that the deal?
It was. Well, when they first launched Action Comics in the New 52, Grant Morrison did a run where it was he really wanted, because no one had really done that for a long time, of what was it like just to be Superman the first time?
Right.
And again, what was that formative stage of, and he wanted to do a throwback to kind of like the Golden Age thing of, again, in Action Comics #1, Superman throws a guy off a roof. He just wanted that kind of really angry young Superman.
Right. Yeah. Did you see the movie?
Yes.
And how was the movie?
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay, I don't want to do any spoilers or anything. Again, kid from the 70s. For me, it was such an emotional peak in 1978 to see the Christopher Reeve Superman, the movie. Movie has its flaws, but that was such a defining moment in my life that any
I'm married to the
movie
Christopher Reeves movie, quite honestly.
And this is different. What I like about Man of Steel is it really is a movie it's a Superman movie that was made today, as opposed to the last time they did it, when they did Superman Returns, and it felt like it was this weird spin-off homage to
Christopher
Reeve.
Yeah. That's $100 million homage.
Yeah.
Don't we all want that?
Yeah. And it was kind of like, and it was weird. Like, well, why are you does this Superman know he's using dialogue from Superman the movie? Like, we're really going to do the, air flying is the safest way of travel all over again. So, I mean, this is a really dark, intense, Man of Steel
Christopher Nolan.
Movie. Yeah.
I couldn't see the last Batman, by the way.
Wow.
Because it was too dark.
Wow.
I was like
you literally couldn't see it because
right. I was like, turn the projector on. Andy went, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. I didn't see the last Star Wars movie either.
Wow.
I was like, I'm good.
You know how it ends.
I know how it turns out.
Then it's not good for that kid. It's not good for that cute little boy.
The cute little boy is about to. Have you heard Patton Oswalt's joke about the prequels?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's just a wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful bit about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So there's so much I want out of because I grew up watching the reruns of Batman and Superman TV shows.
Yes.
And so I always want my heroes to be better.
Right.
But only the established heroes. Like, I can do an anti-hero
right.
if I've never heard of them for some reason.
Well, I think that's what you get in books like Irredeemable and Astro City, know, and things that kind of like take everything you know about superheroes and can kind of put a twist on it.
Right.
But when it's well, I agree with that. I mean, one of my favorite things about the new Iron Man movie was the scene where the people fall out of the plane and he saves people. Because I think that's one of the things we love to see superheroes do is actually rescue people.
Yeah.
And one thing about Man of Steel is, there just feels like, again, it's a very modern take, but it doesn't feel like he's really spending a lot of his time saving people. He's fighting. He's just in a big brawl with General Zod and not really doing that thing. But I think, as I've read what Nolan and David Goyer have said, they really were trying to tell more of an origin story, not just where the origin is he's from Krypton, but it's how does he develop his moral code? And I think that's
neat then. That's neat because there should be some arc because I can watch the origin story of Superman every day. Every day I could, because Smallville, the first couple seasons of Smallville, I'm like, let's do this. Yeah. Excellent. And I understand in Man of Steel, there's no kryptonite.
Right.
And you're like, yay, save the kryptonite.
Right.
They're just,
yeah. Well, when you have Kryptonian villains, you can't, you use the kryptonite. That's that's a draw.
Yeah.
They can't use it on you. You can't use it on them.
It's true. Now Lee mentioned that there was different kinds of kryptonite. Are you familiar with the different kinds of kryptonite? Oh God,
yes. There's a whole rainbow spectrum of kryptonite.
Sort of like the rings of Green Lantern?
Yeah. I mean, green kryptonite is the most common. That's the weakening / killing one.
Okay.
Red's the silly one that has like different effects on Superman. If
in
he gets
Smallville, it makes him evil or cocky.
Yeah, well, in comics, he could Red Kryptonite could give him a super brain or turn him into half a horse or something. I mean, it was just
literally like anything.
Well, that was just one of those devices. Like instead of an imaginary story, if they wanted Superman to become
a woman,
a gigantic or a woman, he was exposed to red kryptonite. Gold kryptonite takes away your powers.
Okay.
There's a blue kryptonite. Blue kryptonite might only have an effect on, if I'm remembering, on like super animals.
Okay. Like the super pets.
Like the super pets.
Okay. And what about, he mentioned white kryptonite.
White kryptonite.
Do you remember that?
That's a good one. But I don't remember.
He couldn't remember what the hell it did either. It was kind of a trip.
Well, I can look that up. But.
All right. Maybe I'll look it up, put it in the notes. Carr D'Angelo, this has been fascinating. It's been an hour. And what we're talking about here is Earth 2 Comics with the number 2.com. It is, you may see me there on a Saturday, picking up some comic books. And there's one in Northridge as well. Super fun. Thank you so much for doing the show.
Thank you for having me.
Take care of each other out there, Rangers. Okay, bye.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?